Welcome to another episode of Sage Real Stories. Today we're joined by Stacy Allwein, a real estate team leader from Frederick, Maryland. Stacy has endured multiple losses in her life, the most difficult being the loss of her husband, Bob, last June from pancreatic cancer. But the most remarkable thing about Stacy's story is that no matter how many hits she has taken, she's gotten back up in the most amazing way. And this saying that it's not how many hits you take, but how many times you get up. Every time Stacy gets up, she sets forth positive energy back into the universe. And her story is one of perseverance, but also turning, every pain that we encounter into power of some kind that doesn't waste the pain, right? It makes some purpose from it. And I just love her story, and I know that you're going to really be inspired as well. Welcome to the Sage Real Stories podcast, where we are hearing from real women who have a story to share. As women, we face many different challenges as we navigate through this thing called life. But no matter what it is, someone has been there, has been through those woods and charted a path. We are connecting you with that woman who has the story you need to hear, to have a conversation where you can ask questions and have a mutually meaningful connection. We made it really easy. All you have to do is click the link in the bio and we will connect you with any sage that you would like to chat with. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy this Sage Real Story. Thank you, Stacy, for being here, being vulnerable, sharing your story with this community.
Thank you for having me today. I'm looking forward to doing this, and I am looking forward to hopefully helping somebody along the way go through their journey.
What was the first, and maybe you want to start before that even, but your life was good up until your first loss. And what did that look like for you?
So I was 24 years old, and my younger brother, Mike, was killed suddenly in a car accident. He was 23, and it was in 1989, and it was just an absolutely tragic and devastating loss to my parents, to me, to my youngest brother, and all of our family and friends, and to my, at the time, boyfriend, who became my husband. It was something I never imagined, just couldn't even fathom what was happening to our family. And it really shaped me from a very young age. I felt the need to take care of. I've always been a caretaker. I've always been the person that was there for my parents, there for my siblings, there for my grandmother. But this just changed my life so drastically. I became more, I think that's when I started to get a lot of anxiety because I was so worried. If I heard sirens, it was like, who's hurt? Who's gonna be involved in something in our family? And it really shaped just my vision of life and just the way I felt about things, the way I felt about life being so vulnerable. But again, I was very young and was able to, from that point on, get engaged, get married, have kids, and always kept Mike's memory alive. My youngest is my son, and his name is Michael. He's named after my brother. And my kids feel like they knew Mike because we've never let his memory die.
Tell me a little bit more about how you took the role on as the caregiver, and why did that come naturally to you, or is it something you felt was just needed and you stepped into, or maybe both?
So I think there's a lot of backstory on that as well. I had an amazing mom who happened to be bipolar, and so she suffered quite a bit. And as a young child, I was very in tune to her depression and her just trying to be everything she could possibly be to us three kids. And so I feel like just in my personality, I was more at a young age, not physically taking care of anybody, but being more the adult and trying to take care of her.
Mhm.
And my dad, just because I was so close with my dad and just wanted everything to be okay,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like as a young child. So then when Mike died, I then, you have a different role. I was the oldest child and very close with my parents, and losing a child has to be the most horrible thing that could possibly happen. And so from that day forward, it was making sure that my parents had somewhere to go, somewhere, every holiday, every event, I wanted to make sure that they were taken care of.
What a old soul for 20, something years old, to have that ability to step into what others need, in a way that is just so selfless. I'm sure that that is a just an inherent quality that you have, I'm guessing. So you sort of move on from that awful tragedy where, you kind of have this feeling that at any moment the other shoe's going to drop. Did that feeling just take time? Did it ever go away completely? Did it just get less loud? Because I had my daughter suffer a tragedy, and I know that she experiences that, and so I'm wondering how did that heal for
Mhm.
you?
So I mentioned that, my then boyfriend, who became my fiance shortly after, and we got married, the impact like never went away, but it changed and it lightened a little bit. I used to have this vision in my mind at this time that as long as nobody died, we can get through anything. And that was just something that I had in my mind all the time, even during, we were young, married, had, financial problems or not, well, had, financial struggles being young. But I would always tell myself, okay, nobody died. We can get through this. Having my children really changed my parents' lives. After grieving for quite a while, then they had these awesome grandchildren that they were, so involved with, and they were the best grandparents, and we got into a really good place. I never forgot, and I still haven't forgotten Mike. But from there, I feel like it made me a better mom, a better person,
Mm.
and it was, just a very tragic loss until additional things happened.
Tell us what was next.
So in 2006, my brother Sean, who was 2.5 years younger than me, died of a drug overdose. Sean was 38 years old. He had 3 kids. He was an amazing guy. He was just struggling with a lot of his own demons and did not seek the proper help. And I got a call late evening on a Thursday on January 5th and 2006. And the paramedics called and were, trying to revive him, and asked, actually, my husband was on the phone with them and said, is there any way he could be doing drugs? Because we didn't know what was going on. And my husband was like, anything's possible. So I had to call my parents and take them to the hospital. And by the time we got there, he was already gone. And it was awful. That's not even a way to describe it. It was terrible. And it was terrible to see my parents have to go through this again.
Yeah.
And I remember the doctor saying to me, you've got to take care of your parents. And that made me kind of angry because I was like, well, first of all, you don't know, you don't know us. And second of all, what about me? That was my thought. Like, what about me?
Right.
But it kind of does lead to part of my story about being an adult sibling that loses their sibling, because it's very different. People always say, and it's true, like the parents, there cannot be anything worse than losing a child. But when you are a sibling and you've lost the person or persons that you grow up with, that you expect to grow old with, and to be there for your parents, and after your parents are gone, it's not a natural order for them to pass away. at such a young age. I started really struggling with that. I'm struggling with my faith and struggling with why did this happen? That's when
Again,
it really hit
why
me.
did this happen again? I'm sure you were
Yes,
wondering, like, how could this happen again?
again. And like, no, because everything's going to be all right as long as nobody dies. Well, somebody died again. So I struggled and struggled and struggled. And the way that I got through the beginning of grieving over Sean was I ended up starting a very small support group at my church for people that had lost adult siblings. There were about 5 of us in it, and we met for a year, and it was amazing, and it helped me get where I needed to be in a better place. And I'm still really good friends with these other 4 ladies that happened to join this group, and we all were kind of struggling with the same thing. Like, we understood that we needed to take care of the rest of our family, but we also had to figure out how to take care of ourselves. And at that time, a friend of mine who'd had a lot of loss as well gave me a book, and it was called Surviving the Death of an Adult Sibling by T.J. Ray.
Wow.
And it's the only book that I'm aware of that kind of focuses on this experience. And it just made a big difference in my life.
This is an interesting point. Things that we go through sometimes are nuanced, right? I mean, who would think that the experience of losing a sibling when you're young versus as an adult, the experience of losing a parent versus a sibling, and even for me, the loss of my dad, I think, was different than other people who lost a parent because of the way that it happened. And so, experiences that we have, if we can find those people that understand our unique experience, and this book that was written, right? It just really resonated with you because it was exactly what you were going through.
Exactly.
I'm really passionate about that. It's what I'm trying to engender through SageLink, and I think it's just such an important point to take a pause on. And I'm curious, how did you find that group to start? Like, you just put a message out to your church group, and there was a sign up. And what do you think that the other members got out of that group? What was it that really healed you through that group?
So one, I mentioned that I was struggling with my faith.
Mm.
I was raised Catholic. It was in our Catholic church, and the church. Long story short, when Sean died, I reached out to my church that I had. My kids went to Catholic school. I'd gone to this church for many, many years, and nobody called me back. Like, I couldn't get anybody to call me back about having a funeral, and I was really upset, angry. It was he died on a late Thursday night. I needed to plan a funeral for my brother. And so I ended up going back to the church like an hour away that we all grew up in.
Wow.
And they were so welcoming. And that's where we had our funeral. And then my church didn't even contact me for like 5 days. It got a note got put in the wrong place. And I was really angry, and I was never going to go back there again. So I ended up waiting several months, and I talked to a priest at one of the other local churches. And he talked me through the process, apologized for the other church. And, I still didn't have great feelings about it, but what I did have great feelings about was that I wanted to help someone else. And he said, well, and I told him I had this idea. And he said, why don't you do that here? And so I went on like 3 masses that they had, and I got up and spoke. I spoke about my experience, and that this is what I wanted to do. And if there were people out there, then I would be so happy to do this. And immediately there were 5 other people, and we signed up, and we just met like once a month, and it helped them too. They were almost all in the same stage, which was very ironic, like about the same time period. And we just
Ironic,
met and
or
talked.
maybe it wasn't ironic. Maybe that's the stage where you just most needed support. And that's
Absolutely. Oh,
why
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
that's incredible. I love that you did that. So, how was the healing process from there for you now?
It was tough. The stigma at the time of somebody dying of a drug overdose was really difficult as well. I am so transparent. In the beginning, my parents mentioned that he died, like they told people he died from an asthma attack. And that really, I couldn't cope with that. I had to tell people the truth. I had to tell my kids, Uncle Sean died from doing drugs. And my kids were young. And I was criticized by some people saying, I can't believe you told your kids that. I mean, they weren't that young. They were first and fifth grade. But I'm like, what if like that saves one person? And that's where my brain always kind of is.
100%. It's those uncomfortable things, same thing with suicide, right? And depression. It's like, you don't want to ask somebody, do you have a plan? But that can actually save their lives. And so it feels uncomfortable because these aren't things we like to talk about and they're stigmatized. But yeah. What's next in the life of Stacy's?
In between all of this, I really have had an amazing life. Most amazing husband, amazing kids. We've had so much fun. We're a great family. But some of these awful tragedies have just really defined me. And I try so hard to make sure that when they have defined me, that I've done something about it. So that was 2006, and things were good after. We dealt with what we needed to deal with. Just went on being a mom and a wife and a business owner and doing all of the things that I wanted to do. And I have amazing friends, very active in our community. And then about 2016, we started to notice that my mom was experiencing a lot of memory loss. And she was young. She was like 60, 68. And we were very worried, but we were trying to figure out and kind of put it in the back of our mind. Well, in 2018, she passed away from Alzheimer's. She had gone from some memory loss to full-blown Alzheimer's. And it was terrible. And it was awful. And it was a terrible way for her to die, and for my dad, and for everybody that knew her. She was just a very loving person, and Alzheimer's is a terrible disease. It's just another hard thing for our family, but it was something that we had to deal with. With that loss, I got really involved with the Alzheimer's Association. I just felt the need again to do something. So I started volunteering with the Alzheimer's Association and did a couple of their walks, and I got to speak at one of the Alzheimer walks. And we formed a team, and my kids called my mom Gra, and so we were Gra's fighters for our team. And I had a lot of friends that were on our team, and just needed to do something to help our family get through that. To this day, it's so hard. I now have 3 grandchildren, and she hasn't got to meet any of them, and she would go absolutely crazy over them. You don't forget any of this, and it doesn't go away, and it impacts everything that you do in life, or that I've done in life. But one of the things that I have been able to do is we endured so much with trying to find the right resources for my mom, the right places for her. I couldn't get information. It was hard. And to this day, I have so many people reach out to me, or my kids will say, hey, I work with this person and their mom has Alzheimer's, or their grandma has Alzheimer's. Would it be okay if they called you? That's how I like to connect with people. And, we did have some really terrible experiences with places that, we received services from, and then we had an amazing experience. So I like to help people kind of navigate that, although I have no professional experience, just from a family perspective on how to do that.
These experiences that you have this incredible way to balance. Yes, it's terrible what happened. I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I don't forget. I have moments where I grieve, but in between, what can I do to make some positive impact from this terrible situation? I mean, we're not even going to get to, we haven't even gotten to Bob yet. And already every single time you've encountered these terrible tragedies, you've put forth such a beautiful, again, a positive into the universe.
Fine.
It's amazing, Stacy. And I just want to take a moment here for listeners I usually say this at the end, and you have a little bit at the beginning in my intro, but as with all sages who share their stories on this podcast and on the platform, Stacy is here. If anyone who wants to talk about having a parent that has, or a family member who's gone through Alzheimer's or suffered the loss of a sibling as an adult, or any of these, I mean, you have this breadth of now lived experiences and have learned from them, but also just feel that you want to make others feel less alone. I mean, all of that, right? It's so healing. It's so valuable. It's actually scientifically proven to be beneficial to mental health. Just that connection alone, never mind the resources and the insights you have and these other things that you've learned on how to navigate it. So I just want to take a moment and recognize how amazing it is what you're doing, Stacy.
Thank you. So after being involved with the Alzheimer's Association, I still had this really big need to help people that had experienced a sibling loss or something to do with drug overdoses and that kind of thing. Having my own real estate team in Frederick, I'm very, very active in the community, love charity events, I'm a very social person. So I need people and I need to be around people. And my husband and I were building a house and we went to buy some furniture and met a guy who was working at the furniture store, and his dad actually owned it. And he told me that it was a long way that we figured this out, but he was in recovery. He had been in recovery from drugs for several years, and he was really active in the community. And they were trying to build a recovery high school in Frederick, Maryland. And I was like, wow, that sounds so interesting. And I was like, my brother died of a drug overdose, and I have been involved in just fundraising for other small nonprofits. Fast forward, he and I texted that whole night about my brother and about what he's doing. And then I came to one of their meetings, and it was called the Phoenix Foundation. And the whole premise of the Phoenix Foundation was to build a recovery high school. By that fall, I was on the committee for their gala. From there, I'm now the vice president of the Phoenix Foundation board, and it is 100% my passion. I am so excited about what we've been able to do and bring to Maryland. It's for teenagers between 9th and 12th grade that need a different environment for school. So basically, they may go to rehab or just having a drug problem in school and it's just not working, and they get placed, or their parents choose to send them to the Phoenix school. We don't turn anyone away. There's scholarships. If, I was having an alcohol or drug problem and went into rehab, and then I came home, they would say, hey, don't hang out with the same people don't go to the bar and hang out with the same people that you've been doing this with year after year. But yet we put kids back in the same school, back with their same peers, and they're gravitating to the same people. And it's very hard for them to be understood and also to get the support they need. So this school is life-changing. It is becoming just such a life-changing opportunity for these kids, for their families. We've had one mom moved from Delaware, changed jobs, relocated, just so her child could come to school here.
Amazing.
Wow. And I love them to see them, tell you that, hey, I've been sober for a year and I would have never done that if I didn't have this opportunity. And I've had the opportunity through this whole process to go to AA meetings, which I've never had even thought that I would ever go to one, and be able to talk a little bit and say, I'm here because I'm hoping that you guys, I'm so proud of you, proud of what you're doing. But if my brother had some of these opportunities, which he didn't, he might be here today. But especially for the school, my mom struggled from the time Sean was young in elementary school. He started experimenting with drugs, probably middle school, junior high. And my mom had him, move to lots of different schools, mostly for learning disabilities. But if there was something like the Phoenix Academy back then, I just know that his life story would be different.
Oh my gosh. And so while his life may have been lost, it certainly was not wasted because of what you are doing
Right.
because of that
I
loss.
hope
You,
so. And
you are,
yeah, that's what I think of all the time when I'm involved in that.
yeah. So that was not too long ago that
No.
you started this. So we're in 2019, 2020, COVID. Tell us a little bit now about the greatest loss of your life.
So my amazing husband, Bob Allwein, we met in 1988 in an alley in DC at the Rally in the Alley, which was a St. Patrick's Day festival. And we got married in October of 1990. Had our first child in 91, Emily, and had Michael in 95. And we had the most amazing marriage. It was just so unconditional, so nothing, there's never an option but to be together, be happy, do what we got to do. I mean, of course, we had normal life challenges and everything, but we had a great marriage. And Bob was so many things to so many people. We were living our best life. Our kids were out of the house. We had two grandchildren. Then we had another granddaughter on December 31st of 2023. And Bob and I traveled January and February. We'd gone to Arizona and Las Vegas. When we came home, he was not feeling well. And the middle of March, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he started immediately in a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins. And we both were convinced that he was going to beat this, even though there's only like a 3% survival rate, I think. I couldn't do the research. I had to just stay focused on, he was the most positive person in the whole world, very into every self-help book you can read. He wrote in a journal every day, and I have 1,000 days worth of journals that Bob wrote in, which is a true gift to my kids and myself. And he started his journal every day. At the top, it would be trust in God, life is good. And he would write there, he had different sections, and his first sections would talk about, things that he needed to do that day. It could be like work things. It always said Stacy time, or he would say, meet with Emily, who's our daughter, or do this, or, Mike, so proud of Michael, spend time with the girls, meeting our granddaughters. And then
This was once he was diagnosed. He
no,
started
this was like for 1,000 days before.
a
So he just
thousand
always
days.
did this. I'm just trying to kind of give you
Oh,
an idea of who Bob was. Bob was a real estate investor. He flipped houses. So one of his connections, good friends, lived in California, and they would every day take a picture of their book just to snap that they did it, and they never missed a day. When Bob was diagnosed, he continued to write his book, and every day he was about affirmations, and it would be beat cancer, and he would write it 3 times. Beat cancer, go on an amazing vacation with Stacy. So many things that just showed he was not giving up. And then on the other side, he was going to tell his story and help people. So that was mid-March, and he passed away on June 30th of 2023. So about 2.5 months after he was diagnosed, which was just way too short.
wow.
But he suffered so much. He was just, people come up to me that I don't even know in our community, and they're like, I know you don't know me, but everything I've ever seen about you and your husband are like goals that I have in life. And he just made our whole family's life amazing. The most important thing in his world was his family. And he showed that by doing everything that he possibly could for us. One of the hardest things that, besides the loss of him, is that he did do so much for us, and especially for me. I mean, I haven't cooked since my kids were little.
Wow.
So it's little things that you might take for granted. I mean, we had our roles in our marriage, and he cooked, and I did other things. He did a lot of things, and I'm realizing that more. It was and is the most devastating thing and that I've ever experienced. I thought that I could get through anything in life as long as Bob was by my side, and he was 58. at this age, like, I didn't expect to be a widow. I didn't expect to uh, have my grandkids not get to grow up with him, and then my kids not get to have their dad in their lives at such a young age. It's the deepest, hardest thing that I could ever imagine experiencing.
And it wasn't that long ago. You're coming up upon the 1 year anniversary. What gave you the strength and desire, Stacy, to come forward to share your story now? I know all of the other tragedies you suffered, you healed, you put forth. I mean, the stories are incredible. With Bob, you're undoubtedly still in the healing process. What do you think you've already been able to learn from this just most recent enormous tragedy?
I want to keep his memory alive. I want people to know that no, I'm not okay. I don't know if I'll ever be okay, but I'm here and I'm still running an amazing business. I I smile, I laugh, I'm having a good time with my granddaughters. I have so much fun with my kids when we're all together. We have traveled a little bit. We will continue to live on with Bob to keep Bob's memory alive. It, I cry? I cry all the time. I have really bad days, but I also have really good days. And I want people to know that they can reach out to me. And what I needed when Bob first passed away was somebody to tell me that, okay, you're gonna get through this. It's gonna be awful, and it may never get much better, but you're gonna be better than you are today. And nobody would tell me that. Like, I would say, is it always going to feel like this? And nobody could tell me any different. And I understand that, but you're not going to feel the same way that the way that I felt last June, July, August. I was partially in a fog those months, but also I feel better and I'm able to cope and I'm able to go on. Some days you don't want to, but you do it. And that's why I guess that I come forward. So, people say you're the strongest person I've ever met. Well, I'm really not, but I'm just trying to find my way and trying to find my way of dealing with things. And yes, all these things were thrown at me, and I have no choice. I have no choice but to deal with them.
Right. Oh gosh, there's so much there. There's so much there, Stacy. So moving backwards from the most recent thing you just said, you're not the strongest person. You've just made the choice, the conscious choice to live, right? It's a choice. There's been the podcasts and sages that have said that choice is our number one most significant ability, right? And so you're right, it's not about strength. It's not that I'm so strong, I'm, invincible. No, you are grieving every day, I'm sure. But every day you also make a conscious choice to live and to keep living for those around you and what will ultimately be for yourself, right? Even if today it doesn't feel that way. The other thing is, it's so beautiful that you've been able to come forth at this point. You have this ability to still feel what it's like someone else can't.
Right.
And that's truly a gift to someone, like you said, that's what you needed. And that's what you'll be able to offer to others by coming forward with this story now. You're still able to see this beauty in life that exists around you and carry on Bob's legacy through that. And if you don't mind, share a couple of those stories because they were really powerful.
So one of the things that has really kind of just blown up and been crazy about Bob is that Bob believed in Bigfoot. And I'm not saying like he jokingly believed in Bigfoot. He believed in Bigfoot. And he was going to go someday. He was going to go like on a Bigfoot mission. But I have stories. Bob liked to ride bikes on the C&O Canal, mountain bikes, and I have a good friend they rode together, and Jeff told me this story that I had never heard. But he said the first time they went for a ride on the canal, uh, Bob had all his gear on, and all of a sudden he started making these crazy noises. And Jeff was like, "What are you doing, man?" And he's like, I'm calling Sasquatch. I'm calling Bigfoot." And he was serious. And Jeff just was like, "What the heck? What? You're crazy." And he said his whole time he would at different points he would call out for Bigfoot. So this kind of blew up when we already had like a 6-foot Bigfoot in our backyard that my dad had gotten him years ago. And it was probably the best Christmas gift he ever got in his life. He literally cried. So after he died, people would send me, and I still get probably 2 or 3 times a week, people will be somewhere and they'll see a Bigfoot sticker or a Bigfoot statue or something about Bigfoot. And it's just really defined our memory of Bob. And so at Christmas time, I always have a second tree in my foyer, and I was like, I'm going to make a Bigfoot tree. So I bought a couple ornaments, and then my daughter secretly put a Facebook post out and said, "Hey, my mom is doing this, and if you want to do something for her and send her an ornament, that would be amazing." Well, all of a sudden these ornaments started showing up at my house, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And I had hundreds, and almost no duplicates. And so it's just a great, great, great story and great way to remember him. And my son even got a Bigfoot tattoo on his upper thigh. Like everybody's into Bigfoot.
Bob has made a big imprint.
Yes.
Right?
And I love that. Big. And just this week, my oldest granddaughter, Adriana, told me that she had to write a story. She's in 4th grade, and she wrote about how Bigfoot got big feet. And the story was so adorable. And ultimately, Bigfoot was, I guess, some type of creature walking and stepped on a whole bunch of bees and thorns. And he was in so much pain, but he sat down, he pulled all the thorns out, and his feet were swollen. And they never went back to normal size. And that's how Bigfoot was made.
Oh my God, I have the chills. Do you know why I have the chills right now? Because this is just so tied into the theme of this podcast.
Yes.
Our thorns and our injuries and our wounds make us bigger. Yes. They end up making us bigger. Once they heal, we are bigger and more powerful from them. Oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
It is. And so the other story that I think I talked to you about that is so amazing is Bob and I adore our granddaughters, and they've changed our lives. And we've been fortunate to have a little bit of a different story with our 2 oldest. So Adriana and Amira came into our lives when they were about 3 and 4. My son was getting ready to marry their mom. Their mom was a young widow, and the girls there was no like getting to know you period. Like we fell in love with them, they fell in love with us. The youngest, Amira, said to me, this is right when she found out that Bobby passed away. We were in my room, and I asked her if she was okay. And she said yes. She said, because I know that he's with Gra, who was my mom, and he's with your brothers, and he finally gets to meet my daddy. And that was just, I'll never forget that. They loved him so deeply. And I said to her, and I've said many times to Adriana and Amira, that we are so lucky, and Bob was so lucky, because if they hadn't come into our lives, he wouldn't have gotten those 5 years of being a grandpa before Malia was born. He was only with Malia for about 6 months. So it was such a blessing in so many ways.
There's a saying on a mural in North Carolina, not too far from you, in Durham, and painted on the mural is, "Life is beautiful, life is hard." And I think a great closing to this incredibly powerful podcast is that is it, right? There are tragedies we are going to encounter. Undoubtedly, no one is safe from that in this life, but there is incredible beauty. And what you've done, Stacy, is even a level beyond that, because you not only recognize all of the beauty in between the tragedy, but you are creating more beauty from that tragedy. I can't thank you enough for being here today.
Share.